Welcome back to Museful, the art podcast, your art resource. I'm your host, Jazlibeth, and today we're going to be discussing art internships. Roll the intro. So, in another video, I'm going to be explaining how to enter the museum space and the various stages of that, how it begins with volunteering, to internships, to part-time work, and moving up and up and up. But today, we are going to be focusing on art internships in detail. What is an internship? What do you do in an internship? And why should you apply for internships during art school? Little side note, I do have notes that I reference to make sure all the information I provide is correct. So if you see me looking down at my screen, that's why. So just wanted to clarify that. So let's start with, what is an internship? An internship is defined as the position of a student or trainee who works in an organization, sometimes without pay, in order to gain work experience or satisfy requirements for a qualification. In basic terms, a person or student works in an organization, sometimes without pay, for experience or a qualification like school credit. For art students, the organizations you'd be looking for are artistic institutions. So you're thinking museums, galleries, auction houses, art supporting nonprofit organizations, performing arts theaters, a marketing department, graphic design studios, print shops, printmaking studios. That is the basics of an internship. What do you do during an internship? Well, speaking from experience, I've interned at 3 different museums and I've worked in a performing arts center. So when the question, what do you do in an internship, comes up, my answers differ based on the institution. At one museum, my work was geared towards assisting the education department with students from kindergarten to high school with art camp, which consisted of various art classes that changed weekly. At another museum, I worked under the curator and assisted her with handling artifacts and updating the archive. So a little tidbit on what the archive is. So an art archive is a comprehensive collection of records and documented images about works of art that does a lot more justice than merely preserving the works, which in simpler terms means you have a collection of art pieces referred to as artifacts and historical documents, where each individual item is photographed and all the information about it, such as the title, the artist's name, the dimensions, the date it was made, sometimes the price, the medium, and any other details are collected and stored. If you're familiar with museums, this is where you also get your accession number, which is the unique number associated to that artifact, or a group of artifacts that usually only applies in a museum setting for their collections, both on loan and permanent. My third internship was more of a marketing business side of the museum. I was rebranding business cards and helping out with various museum events. And then at my part-time performing arts theater job, there would be live shows and performances from Broadway to dance competitions, and I would assist with seating guests and checking everyone in. My day-to-day work was less artistically driven as my internships were, but I saw and experienced so many new shows that really impacted me positively. I would go back if I could. I had such a wonderful time at the Performing Arts Theater. So pretty much when it comes to what do you do at an art internship, it depends on the institution. When I was at the theater, I was helping out with normal day-to-day shows that were going on at the theater. And then at the museums, I was doing various work depending on the department I was in. When I was working under the curator, I was literally handling artifacts on a daily basis. And then when I was working at the educational museum, I was working more with the kids and the education program that they had going on. So even within a museum, there are different departments that you can work in, and you can pick and choose which one is more geared towards the career that you're looking for, if it's even in a museum, or any of the skills that you can get in that institution that contribute to your future career. So what does an internship pay? So this is the big question that most people are going to pay attention to. So let me make this very clear. Bottom line, all my internships, in my experience, did not pay. And my theater job did not pay well. I was part-time and I wanted to be full-time, but also keep in mind, in my situation, I needed specific days and hours because of school while I was also working a full-time job to support myself 100% independently. So when I was working my part-time job and when I was interning at these museums, it was a little different and a little harder for me to find opportunities that could cater towards the specific days and times that I had available. When you Google how much does an art internship pay, or any internship pay, you get this blend of answers. And when you're actually searching for internships or part-time jobs, the pay is going to 100% vary when you're looking at recruiting websites. And why is that? Well, every state and every institution varies with their individual budgets, and every department in those institutions also get a specific budget. And I found that here in Florida, the majority of art institutions don't pay for internships at all. They offer students a chance for credit towards their degree, but especially with the complete lack of funding from the state for the arts in Florida, I can see why they're not paying or are not paying as much. What I've noticed on a few part-time jobs and internships that I've seen on Handshake or any other recruiting app is that part-time jobs that are temporarily paid are usually at a much lower rate. And the internships, because they only last a few months at a time, there's a stipend you receive that does not change based on the amount of time you work during your internship. That's why you'll see these positions that say 1 to 2K a month or 2,000 for the year, because you would only get paid the fixed amount after interning for a few months, for example. While you are searching for these various internships and part-time jobs, if they pay, it is important to know about the tax forms that you will need to file if you happen to get a paid position. If you are getting paid for your internship, you need to file your taxes for it. From my research, stipends and being a temporary employee as an intern could give you different tax forms like a 1099 or W-2, so clarify with a financial professional or the institution themselves for the money information. But as long as there's money involved, taxes will be involved. Obviously, that really depends on if you're making a certain amount of money in a year, but to be on the safe side, really double check with a professional financial advisor and ensure that you're not committing tax fraud. So the next point I want to make is, why should you apply for internships, especially if you're not getting paid? Well, in my experience, I worked these internships without pay because despite the effort it took out of me to work full-time, still be taking classes, and work these internships without pay, I did it for the sake of gaining experience on my resume so that by the time I graduated, I could find a position with more ease. That's usually what you want to do ideally, is already have some experience under your belt compared to new graduates looking for positions when they have no experience. But that's also why I did them over the summer, so that my coursework was lighter. So just make sure that you realistically understand what you can handle when considering these internships and part-time opportunities and how you value your work. If you feel like you should get paid for the work that you're going to be putting into this internship, then power to you. Make sure you find a position that works for you. But if you're not finding anything paid, you might have to consider the possibility that you'll have to look for something and work in an unpaid position temporarily until you can find a paid position that you qualify for, or if your situation changes and you move, or things like that. Another reason you should apply for internships, and probably one of the more important reasons, is because whether they're paid or not, statistically, institutions hire people after they intern. You already have a relationship with the institution. They know they can count on you based on your performance during the internship. So technically, you would be a low-risk employee to have, especially since you already have experience in that institution. So the institution wins because they hire an employee they already know and like, And you win because you now get paid as a regular permanent employee for your time, and you gain more long-term experience in your field. Side note again, sorry about the lighting, still figuring things out. Thank you. On the topic of having a relationship with the institution, I think it's really important to mention that the mentors or the internship coordinators during your internship, they become sources in your network. And so speaking from personal experience, whoever manages your internship essentially becomes your mentor during the process of interning on a day-to-day basis. You build relationships with these people and might not realize that they are actually becoming a part of your network professionally. Add them on LinkedIn. At the end of your internship, ask them politely if they could write a letter of recommendation for you for any specific application you're working on, or just to have a letter in your back pocket that speaks of your character if you need it. My mentors have always been very kind to me and have been so happy to work with me over the years, and knowing I have their numbers and knowing that they are professional references of mine, and knowing that I can count on them to speak on my character if I need it is very comforting and helpful professionally. When people hear the word networking, it's like this big scary red sign with bright flashing colors, but in reality, networking is really just the acquaintances that you meet on a regular basis or a regular conversation. Your mentors during these internships, your peers while working at the internship, you're going to school surrounded by other artists. These are all people who will become a part of your professional network in the future. Your network can be anyone who's in your field or adjacent to it, where the relationship you have together can benefit each other with information, the work you're doing, and can give you access to opportunities with just a foot in the door by knowing someone. Speaking of knowing other artists while you're in school, one of the bigger parts of doing an internship, unpaid or paid, is that you can get college credit for it. As you search for internships, it's important to know that internships can count as college credit. For my school, the University of Central Florida, they had a course called Experiential Learning, where you could earn 0 to 3 credits for working at an internship. The requirements of this program will vary based on the school that you go to. So I'm just making you aware that this is an awesome opportunity that is definitely worth looking into, so that way you can get more credits checked off of your degree. That way you can be compensated, if not through getting paid, at least you get college credit. While we're on the topic of college credit, I should also mention portfolio opportunities while interning. While working at an internship, you can absolutely have your own work featured in a portfolio or a written works portfolio that showcases your skills while you were in these positions. We can dive into the topic of portfolios in another episode, but you will want to keep track of the skills that you gain from the internship and any long-term projects that you worked on during your internship. While interning at these museums, I would take pictures of myself handling artifacts, keep copies of the newsletters and social media posts I would work on, also that I had a collection of images and work that I did for any future posts I wanted to make or potentially add it to my portfolio. So make sure to take pictures and create copies of all the documents that you've worked on during your internship, if you're allowed, as long as there's no sensitive information, as a method of putting together a solid portfolio with professional work that will display all of the work and all of the projects that you worked on during your internship. And while you keep a record of all of the work that you've done during those internships, you can definitely use those for future applications. And so to come full circle, the application process of an internship is very much the same as just finding a job, where you need to submit your resume and a cover letter. In a future video, I can cover the topic of resumes and cover letter tips and tricks, but for now, here are some tips for the application process. Make sure to have your resume ready and ensure it caters to the internships that you are applying for. Don't put any irrelevant work experience, and always start with education at the top of your resume. The same applies to your cover letter. Make sure your cover letter is specific to the institution and addresses them directly. This is a lot of work, especially when you're sending a lot of applications in a day, but it pays off to be very detail oriented and not sending mass applications. Take each one individually. Don't try to message people on LinkedIn that you don't know, or if they're not in your network. they probably won't respond, and it definitely won't lead to any future employment opportunities. But I will say email is your best friend. Usually, if I see an opportunity on an app like Handshake or Indeed, I will go to that institution's job board, make sure that they're actually hiring, and apply directly to the institution. I found that by doing that, these third-party websites are not as effective as messaging the department the internship falls under directly. That way, the intern coordinator knows that you were looking at that specific institution, not a sea of opportunities on a job recruiter board, and these people are checking their emails daily and respond within 2 days usually. If you don't get a response after a week or 2 weeks, email the institution again, especially if it's an internship you really want. They appreciate the nudge. They appreciate when you actually behave as if you really want it. Initiative is everything. And that's everything. I think I've covered all the major points in our internships. If I missed anything regarding our internships, make sure to comment it down below. And if there's enough extra comments, I'll make another video all about our internships with all of your unanswered questions. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Museful. Remember that I post 3 times a month on Wednesdays, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!